croeso cynnes iawn I cyfarfod hwn. Morning everyone, and a warm welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Assurance Committee to consider the final accounts of HEIW. First of all, I'd like to do some welcomes and introductions. Welcome to Dawn Jones, who is a new committee independent member, to Judith Hardesty, a new independent member, brand new this week. Welcome to your first meeting, Judith.
Thank you very much.
Welcome to Jill Lewis, who's joining us for this particular accounts meeting. To our chairman, Chris Jones. To our chief executive, Alex Jones. To Matthew Edwards, Engagement Director, Audit Wales, Matthew Bowen, Senior Auditor, Audit Wales, Adam Dugdale, Financial Accountant in attendance to observe the meeting. And online we have John Gammon, Paul Dalton, and Andrew Doughton. Welcome everyone. Are there any apologies for absence, David?
No.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest?
None received.
Thank you. We are not receiving the draft minutes and action log of the last regular audit committee meeting held last week. Those will be presented to the next regular meeting of the audit committee. Therefore, there are no matters arising. So let's move on to part 2. And to agenda item 2.1, presentation of annual accounts 23-24. And Lynn.
Thank you very much, Diolch yn fawr. I think it's a pleasure today to be able to present the annual accounts for the 2023-24 financial year. Audit committee members will be aware that we brought a paper and draft set of accounts to the audit committee on the 7th of May, and subsequently those accounts have been reviewed and audited by Audit Wales. So the set of accounts that you've got here in the pack, which are in Appendix 1, I was going to run through the headlines because I'm conscious that the audit committee have been through some of these in detail before. So I'm going to run through the headlines, just talk about some of the corrections that have been made, and then just highlight some of the recommendations that are being made as a result of that. So really, in terms of the key headlines, we've got 2 statutory financial duties. One is to operate within what's called our revenue resource limit or revenue budget, and you'll see from the accounts that we are reporting that we've met that financial duty with a surplus of 1.267 million. The second duty is around our capital resource limit or capital budget, operating within that, and again we're reporting that we met that duty with a surplus of £7,000. We also have another financial target that we're measured against, which is around compliance in paying invoices to non-NHS suppliers. It's called PSPP, or Public Sector Payment Policy, where we have to pay at least 95% of our invoices within the 30-day timescale. And again, pleasing to report that we achieved 95.7%, so just exceeded that target as well. So that's really positive, I think, in terms of the past financial year. In terms of the draft accounts and then the final accounts that you've got here today, you'll see that there are some corrections. There were some errors identified around how we estimate the cost of some of our spring student cohorts, so those that take up places in the spring. As a result of that and the review that was undertaken by Audit Wales, we agreed to make some corrections to the accounts. I guess the main one in terms of our revenue resource limit was that it increased our student fee expenditure by about £102,000. So our previous accounts showed a slightly higher surplus. We've reflected that correction, which is in the surplus reported of 1.267 million. There are also some changes around prepayments and accruals that affect our balance sheet but didn't impact on the revenue resource limit. So we accepted those corrections and made them, and they're reflected in the accounts that you've got. I think as part of the review, and I know that Audit Wales will probably come on to this later, there were four matters identified where Audit Wales have made recommendations. One of them was around making those corrections to the expenditure related to the spring student cohort. We've accepted all four recommendations in full. And again, when we come on to the ISA 260 report that Audit Wales will present, you'll see that we've agreed a full management response to each of those recommendations. There was one outstanding issue when we circulated the papers for the audit committee, and that related to the pay offer that had been made to medical staff in NHS Wales. So at the time that we actually published the papers, we were still waiting for the vote to take place on whether that pay offer would be accepted. Subsequently, the pay offer has been accepted. 20th of June, that was notified, and it means that we will include a note in the accounts basically confirming that those costs related to the pay offer will be accounted for in 24-25 annual accounts. There's a more detailed note that just sets out what that means for junior doctors, consultants and SAS doctors, and how that will be reflected. It's a note that's consistent across all NHS Wales bodies as well. So I think that's probably all I really wanted to cover at this stage. Obviously, once the audit committee have considered the ISA 260 report with Audit Wales opinion, our recommendation is to obviously note the audited annual accounts and recommend approval to the board, which is meeting on the 11th of July, to consider and hopefully approve the accounts. And then subject to approval, they will then be submitted to Welsh Government by the 15th of July deadline. So I'll pause there, but happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Glyn. As Glyn has said, we won't actually proceed to consider the recommendation at this point. We'll do that after Audit Wales, but we will take questions now, colleagues. We have seen the draft accounts previously, and Glyn has highlighted the changes that have been made as a result of the audit, but there may still be some residual questions. Colleagues? Jill?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I didn't know whether to wait until after the ISA 260 or whether to ask it now, because it relates to the points in the ISA 260.
Shall we take it later?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, in which case, John.
Thank you, Chair. I note from the paper that the key issues, three are noted. One is in relation, Glyn, as you have said, to meet the requirement to break even against the revenue resource limit. The second one again is capital resource limit. I see within the papers evidence against those two, which provides me assurance. I can't locate the evidence that satisfies me that we have met the requirement to pay 95% of non-NHS invoice within 30 days. You've just quoted a percentage that we do meet it, but I couldn't identify the evidence that verifies that, unless I've missed it within the papers.
Yeah, it's in so it's in the appendices. I'm just trying to find the page. This is not actually, strictly speaking, it's not a statutory financial duty, but it is a financial target. if I draw your attention, if you've got the appendix there, which is 2.1b in the papers, and if you go to page 23 in the accounts, you'll see that there are a couple of paragraphs there, one around the integrated medium-term plan, and then below that there's one titled 2.4 credited payment, and that's the evidence where we're reporting that we've met that target of 95%. So you'll see the performance for 23-24, and then the comparative performance for the previous year. So for 23-24, it confirms that percentage of 95.7%. So apologies, I've had to sort of take you into the depths of the accounts. But hopefully that gives you that assurance.
That answers my question, Chair. Thank you. I couldn't, for some reason, I couldn't find it. But Glyn, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, John. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item 2.2, the annual accountability report for 23-24. And I think this is you, David.
It is. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r Pwyllgor os gwelwch na ystyried yr adroddiad atebolrwydd blynyddol. Mae'r adroddiad atebolrwydd yn cynnwys 3 rhan, y datganiad llywodraethu blynyddol, yr adroddiad tal a staff ac yr adroddiad atebolrwydd seneddol. Mae'r Pwyllgor eisoes wedi ystyried datganiad llywodraethant blynyddol yn ei cyfarfod ac yn hawlwyr ar y gweithfed Ebrill, ac mae'r adroddiad sydd ger bron heddiw yn adlewyrchu yr awgrymiadau a wnaethpwyd gan y Pwyllgor yn y cyfarfod hwnnw. Felly, da ni'n gofyn, os gwelwch yn dda, i'r Pwyllgor i ystyried yr adroddiad atebolrwydd ac hefyd i argymell.
Apologies, this isn't working. Sorry.
It should be on 6. It should be 6.
No, it says 4.
Okay.
Thank you. Right. Okay, sorry.
That's okay. Have you got it on to 6?
This is 6.
Okay. That's okay. Felly, ymwneud gyda'r amherster technegol. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r Pwyllgor os gwelwch yn dda ystyried yr adroddiad atebolrwydd ac hefyd i bod y Pwyllgor yn argymell bod y bwrdd yn cymeradwyo'r adroddiad yn ei cyfarfod ar y cyfarfod wrthnos nesaf.
Diolch, David. So, are there any comments or questions regarding the annual accountability report? As David said, we have already seen much of it. No? So are we content to recommend the report be approved by the board for submission to Welsh Government? Are we content?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Shall we move on therefore to 2.3 performance report? And again, I think this is you, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, yn ôl â'r adroddiad atebolrwydd, mae'r adroddiad perfformiad yn rhan o ein adroddiad blynyddol ar bwrdd sydd wedi bod yn blynyddo hwn i Llywodraeth Cymru ym mis Gorffennaf. Mae'r adroddiad perfformiad yn amlinellu gwaith agig dros y flwyddyn diwethaf, y flwyddyn ariannol diwethaf, ac mae'n cynnwys y cynnydd amlaethbwyd gan y corff o ran cyflawni ein nodau strategol ac ein perfformiad yn gyffredinol. Felly, da ni'n gofyn os gwelwch yn dda i'r Pwyllgor i ystyried yr adroddiad ac hefyd i'r gymell i fod o'n cael ei gymeradwyo gan y bwrdd yn ei cyfarfod wythnos nesaf. Os gwelwch yn dda. Diolch.
Diolch, David. Oh, it's quite a detailed report. Any comments, observations, suggestions? Is it a reflection of last year? Lots of nods, no comments at all. So, again, we are asked to consider the report and recommend that it is approved by the board for submission to Welsh Government in due course. Are we content to make that recommendation?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're working our way through the package of materials that need to be submitted, and we come to item 2.4, the Audit of Financial Statements report and letter of representation. Over to you, please.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. I just maybe start in Welsh, if that's okay, and then I'll turn to English as we go through the report, if that's okay. Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd, y bore da i'r pwyllgor. Dwi'n cymryd mae aelodau wedi darllen yr adroddiad, so wna i jyst tynnu allan rhai o'r prif casgliadau sydd wedi cynnwys yn yr adroddiad. Mae rhaid dweud mae'n adroddiad positif sy'n yn adlewyrchu, dwi'n meddwl, yn dda iawn ar y trefniadau sydd gan y corff i parantoi datganiadau ariannol. A da ni diolchgar iawn i'r tîm cyllid, yn wedi'i Glyn, Martin, Adam a'r staff, a hefyd staff HRW hefyd am eu cymorth ac i gweithredio trwy ystod yr adroddiad. Mae'n troi at Saesneg rwan os fedrai, tra dwi'n mynd trwy prif elfennau yr adroddiad. And as I mentioned, I'll assume that members have read the report, but the positive thing is the Auditor General, once you approve the accounts report next week and have considered them today, intends issuing an unqualified opinion on your financial statements and annual report for the year. And that opinion covers twofold, really. That in all material respects, the accounts give a true and fair view of the financial affairs of the organisation at the balance sheet date of the 31st of March 24. They've been properly prepared in accordance with HM Treasury's FREN and the Manual for Accounts, and also followed the directions made thereunder by Welsh ministers. And the second part of that opinion covers our regularity opinion that expenditure and income in the financial statements has been applied for the purposes intended by the Senedd, and also that the transactions recorded within them conform to the authorities which govern them. Now, we don't give absolute assurance, as I'm sure you're familiar with, but obviously within the report on page 201, it sets out the fact that we apply the concept of materiality, and that's standard practice across the industry. And you can see the figure there that the materiality we determined this year, based on 1% of gross expenditure, is 3.1 million, the main body of the accounts. But there are also two specific areas of interest where we apply a lower threshold, and you can see that those thresholds relate to the remuneration report and also the related party disclosures for personal interest. And we apply much lower thresholds for those areas because of the sensitivity of those disclosures as well. One thing to draw your attention to on page 202 of the report in your pack is our compliance with the ethical standards, and I'm pleased to say there are no breaches there. We did flag in our detailed plan that came to the previous committee that there was one potential threat to our independence relating to maths due to his partner or spouse being a member and a training grade doctor. And I'm pleased to say we've mitigated that risk. The arrangements we put in place have operated as intended, and that risk hasn't materialised. So as I say, the Auditor General will certify the accounts following approval by the board, and once you provide us with a copy of the letter of representation, which is set out in Appendix 2 of the report. That contains standard representation, so we're not seeking anything over and above we'd usually seek in any normal year. Glyn, I think, has mentioned the late amendment to the accounts following the junior doctors' votes. I think tail end last week the outcome was known, and as Glyn mentioned, an additional non-adjusted post-balance sheet disclosure will be included, and that wording will be standardised and shared by Welsh Government. But the positive thing, I think, from our perspective, there are no uncorrected misstatements within the accounts. The misstatements that have been identified have all been amended. Glyn's probably stolen your thunder slightly, Matt, in terms of taking the committee through one of those adjustments, but I'll hand over to Matt now just to briefly touch on that and also the recommendations that we've made within the report.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I will talk through the summary of the corrections made and the recommendations made on the basis of our audit. The first and main correction relates to the estimates of prepayments and receivables for the university for intake. But as Glyn has already spoken through, the the amendments that I will repeat. The second correction that we identified was made related to the remuneration report. So there were a few amendments required to the disclosures to ensure they were accurate and it complied with the relevant guidance which were made. And then finally, there were a few other narrative and disclosure amendments needed for the accounts. We can all identify them separately within our report because we didn't deem them to be material, but they have all been amended. So as Matt said, there was a good quality set of accounts, so those were the only corrections that were required. Moving on to the recommendations. The first recommendation again relates to the spring university cohort. So a little bit more detail on the errors. So some of the errors related to some spring cohort courses being missed from the estimate calculation. For some of the courses, there was incorrect data use. For example, the course start date was wrong in the calculation. And there was also incorrect accounting treatment of the payables aspect of the estimate where there was overcommissioning for some of the courses. In terms of the actual recommendation, we recommended that management implement a more in-depth quality review prior to the accounts being submitted. And also that management should consider clear and desk instructions to set up the approach and treatment for various eventualities for the estimates. In terms of the benefits of implementing these recommendations, so an improved quality review and also the implementation of desk instructions will aid in HRW's performance monitoring, preparation of management accounts, and also obviously then preparation of the annual accounts of the year end, which in turn will reduce the amount of audit queries needed as part of the audit process. As Glenn mentioned, management have expected this recommendation in full, and I said they'll implement the instructions by the end of August this year. We'll do ledger reporting to try and improve monitoring and reconciliation by the end of September, and then ensure that an improved quality assurance process will be built into the year-end process by April 2025, ready for the next year's audit. Our second recommendation relates to capitalization of internally generated intangible assets. So this is the first year that HRW have capitalized these kind of costs, which were in line with the international accounting standards. HRW began capitalising internal costs from Q3 onwards, which was before approval of the project, and also Welsh Government providing assurance that they would support it. However, we did identify that there wasn't any contemporaneous evidence documenting this Welsh Government support from that time. We also found that HRW didn't sign and return the award letter from Welsh Government within the 14 days specified on the award letter. And then finally, that internal costs, staff costs were identified by a retrospective review and discussion with staff rather than, again, contemporaneous evidence or documented details to support it. So in terms of recommendations, we recommend that HEIW for any future projects produce contemporaneous documents detailing when costs can start to be capitalised from, with particular emphasis on when the financial resources to complete projects have been secured. We've also recommended that HRW ensure that any funding offers, whether from Welsh Government or elsewhere, are returned promptly and in line with the terms and conditions. And then finally, we recommended that HRW consider improving the recording of staff time to provide evidence for the costs being capitalised. Benefits of this just ensures that the accounting treatment complies with the international accounting standards again, and also just helps develop good practice for any future projects undertaken. Again, as Glenn said, management accepted this recommendation in full and aim to implement it by November 24, but have pointed out that it will be done as part of the financial control procedure annual review. Our third recommendation then relates to asset tagging for tangible assets. So this year we physically verified the existence of 3 assets, all of which were held at the health body sites. Unfortunately, none of these assets had an asset tag identifying it as a HAW asset. So in terms of our recommendation there, we recommended that HAW carried a review to make sure all assets have the relevant asset tag that can easily then be traced back to the HAW's own asset register. Benefits of this, so HAW do have lots of assets held at non-HAW sites. So providing them with a unique identifiable asset tag will help reduce the risk of misappropriation of these assets, and also help ensure that HAW can monitor the assets and know where they are. Again, management accepted this recommendation in full and plan to complete this exercise by the end of the year, December 2024, and will prioritise firstly the assets held off-site. Our final then recommendation relates to employee contracts. So as part of our standard testing of payroll expenses, we identified that there was one employee who didn't have a valid contract extension letter in place. So this individual was initially employed on a fixed term basis. They had an extension to June 2021, but then when there were no further contract extension letters in place after that, as confirmed by HR. So here we've just recommended that review undertakes a review of all employee records held in the EFR to make sure that every member of staff has a valid contract or contract extension letter in place. And then this is just to ensure that there's certainty then should any employment disputes arise with the staff members and HAW as a body. Management have accepted this response in full, but have pointed out that since June 2021, you've moved to the track system, which automatically issues contracts and start dates known, but that they will review all existing employees on ESR, starting with those who are on temporary arrangements, and they aim to complete this exercise by the end of September this year. And that's it for our recommendations. And as I said, they've all been accepted in full, and we'll look to follow them up as part of our audit next year. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. So finally, Chair, the committee's asked you to note the report and also to recommend that the S260 in the final letter of representation is considered by the board next week. Thank you, Chair. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Jill, you have some questions.
Yes, thank you. I just had a couple of questions, if I could, Chair. Thanks to Audit Wales for that presentation. It's very clear. But I should start by saying well done, I think, to both the auditors and the finance team for bringing this to a conclusion in a timely way. And it does seem as though the audit's gone pretty smoothly. So big well done, I think, to all for doing that, because the accounts are getting more complicated by the year, I think. So inevitably there will be some things that appear in the ISA 260. Just a couple of questions really. The data from the universities that caused the first adjustment. We have asked for a number of years, I think, on about whether the data is sufficiently accurate and timely from the universities. And I just wondered if that was something that anybody would, either the auditors or Glyn Martin, might want to comment on, because it does appear that the information was coming through quite slowly, and whether that's inaccuracies or just a timely issue. So that was I mean, it's not a huge adjustment, but it could be if we haven't got the accurate data. The second one was about the asset register. I think that came to the audit committee many moons ago when we were first set up, but it may be something that the audit committee might like to focus on going forward, again, just to make sure that that's up to date and accurate. The remuneration reports. I remember when you brought the plan for the audits, Matt, that the remuneration reports, and it was ever thus, I think, seems to be a niggly problem everywhere. and you were going to do some specific training to make sure that we all got this right. Did that happen? I suppose. And what do we have to do to kind of, because it's not a complicated report, but every year we seem to get something that sort of pops out from the remuneration report. And the last one is one that I've asked previously. It didn't come up specifically as a recommendation, obviously, but where do the hosted staff appear on remuneration reports?
Okay. So, a number of questions there. You want to go first, Glenn?
Sure. Yeah, happy to. So in terms of the university information, I mean, we do have obviously deadlines for receiving the information that we then use to produce estimates for. There have been occasions where certainly the team have had to go back and query the accuracy of that information, and then as a result of that, there are changes to it. So I think we are still working on trying to make sure that the information is both accurate first time and timely. But it is, yeah, I think it's an issue that we continue to try and focus on, because we understand the importance of it, not only at the end of the year, but actually during the course of the year when we're looking at trying to forecast and advise the board on the financial position going through the year. So we understand the importance of doing that and trying to make sure that as far as possible that information is accurate. I know there are digital solutions being looked at around how we can try and transfer the data with minimal sort of manual intervention. It's probably the best way of putting it. Human error is often is often the cause of that. I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I guess just two other things. Students have up to 10 weeks after they start the course to decide on how they're going to get funded. So actually, if the course doesn't start until March, you know, that does give us a problem. I guess the autumn intake is easier. So there are some assumptions on that. I don't know if the change in bursary rules might help or hinder that. I'm not sure the new year, because I think we're expecting more people to take the bursaries. That might help going forward, I suppose. And I think part of it is we have significantly changed our process from last year with the change in this. That I think some of this is just bedding in that actually, you know, we will look how we can use the ledger better to get the, you know, some quality assurance checks in there. So I'm not really just saying that it's increased the complexity of it, but I think you know, we expected a few teething problems, and you know, we've spoken to the team and we're comfortable we can get over those. So hopefully next year that won't be an issue.
Can I ask Matt to continue?
Jill, if I can just follow on from what Glenn and Martin have shared as well. I mean, clearly, we've raised a recommendation in terms of the quality of the working paper and the analysis behind that, and maybe some of the data. So there is an issue here to resolve. But just to assure the committee, you know, we didn't identify any material issues with that or concerns. Clearly, there's a recommendation arising from it. Management have accepted that, so and we'll follow that as part of our next year's work. So I don't think we'll question the fundamental concerns with the basis of the data that would give rise to material misstatement, if that assures you.
So register, yeah, in terms of asset register, it has increased in scale since we started. Obviously, there's more assets coming in. And we've, at the time, we did look at a software solution, and it was extremely expensive for the assets we have. I think now we're probably doing to look at, do we need to put some investment into that to have a formal working? We still use a spreadsheet, and it's getting bigger and bigger. So I think as a result of this, we will look this year at, is it a better solution? The always solutions are extremely complex. You can imagine the health board, the number of assets they got. I don't think it works for us, but you know, there must be a solution there. So I think that needs to be looked at, and you know, we will. But that is something we need to do.
And again, following on from Martin, again, you know, clearly an area of focus for us in terms of the disclosures within the accounts. No issues identified as far as we're concerned, fundamental concerns or anything for that matter, the fixed asset register, apart from the recommendation made around the asset verification and the need to tag those assets identified.
Yes. Remuneration report. There's an always tag group has been set up to try and to get around this. There's been a change in the reporting, which again doesn't work particularly well. So there's a lot of manual, certainly some of the multiplier note. I think that's a complexity across Wales. We just need to work through it. We are smaller, so I think we've probably got a bit more scope to do it because we can look at individual staff numbers when we're doing it. Our health board does it. It's beyond me really. So they've got a bigger problem than we have. So yeah, there's always a target group set up to look at how the remuneration report has done. Additional complications this year with the McLeod judgment for pensions, which has been the basis of many of our meetings. Again, hopefully that's a one-off thing that will clear in the future. If anyone else had a comment on the remuneration report.
Yeah, and following on, Jill, you're right, it is an issue that we're encountering at a lot of audited bodies, whether it's the health sector and central government bodies as well. I think part of that is we, as you know, we apply that lower threshold of materiality, so we're applying some microscopic lens to the disclosures within it. So even a £1 error will result in a change to the remuneration report. And I think the other thing probably around that as well is clear there have been changes as well within the board of HRW during the year, so it always increases the risk there are changes. Don't recall the offer of training, but we can pick that up with the finance team. I need to go back to the detailed plan to look at that. What I will say is we'll pick it up as part of the post-project learning we hold with the finance team to identify what they and we can work differently in terms of trying to address this going forward to improve the quality of that report.
I think it came to audit committee chairs. Sorry, Mark.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. Jill.
You did it.
Could I ask a newbie question? Oh, sorry, have you finished?
No, the last
Sorry.
one was
Sorry.
post.
Sorry.
Hostess staff, I assume you mean sort of responded ones out. Is that correct?
No, we host the chief nursing
Okay.
officer. So where do they appear in the remuneration report? I asked last year, and and Audit Wales are going to investigate, because that's just one example for across Wales.
Yeah. My understanding is obviously they don't sit in your remuneration report. We're satisfied that's appropriate. So therefore they should sit in the body that's hosting them. However, it's a consideration as to whether they're board members or whether they fall within a definition of that remuneration report. So that'll be a consideration for the Welsh Government auditors. So I can pick that up with them, Jill, but that's the arrangement I would anticipate or expect.
All right. I think last year I said that they must make decisions somewhere. So I think
we'll follow that up and get back to you.
Yeah, when we start to prepare the note, you have to decide who's a senior manager of the organisation who has significant control. So that person doesn't feed into that. So it depends on their role in Welsh Government, I assume. But
so that would be classified offline.
yes,
Thank you. Sorry, Judith.
Yeah, sorry, it's a newbie question. And people get to know that I'm not great with vagueness. So I wanted to ask a question about the assets. You talk in your recommendation about 3 assets, and then you say that HRW has numerous assets. Can I understand what's the scale? And is it 10? Is it 10,000? I don't know what numerous assets means.
So, we don't hold a huge amount of assets. It's going to be in the tens of assets on off-site locations. Although obviously we do have laptops and such like that are also, but they are recorded, but it's in the tens. Predominantly carried over from Cardiff University, sort of dental foundation, dental, phantom heads, that type of issue. There's a few pieces of training equipment we have bought in the past few years. And we place in the sites, but it's in the low tens.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much.
Term phantom and asset doesn't go together.
Okay. Any further questions or comments? Jim.
Thank you. Can I just take this opportunity to thank Audit Wales, to thank Matthew and the team. I think this year we've been working to a shorter deadline, and I really just wanted to recognise their openness and the constructive way in which they've approached the audit. And I think, we have a good working relationship with them, which is really important. So I just wanted to formally record that. Thank you.
Thank you, Glyn. And I'd like to add the committee's thanks, both to your team and to Audit Wales for the thorough preparation of the accounts and the audit. Very interesting recommendations. I can see they're very specific to this organisation, and it shows you've got under the skin of HEIW, and really good management responses too, with detail. Thank you, Dana. It's a bit of a theme at our audit committee.
It is, yeah.
Okay, so we've been asked to note the report, and we so do. And we're also asked to recommend the ISA 260 and final letter of representation be considered by the board on the 11th of July. Are we content to recommend that? Yes, thank you, colleagues. And we will now note the audited accounts for HEIW for 23-24. And are we content to recommend them to the HEIW board to approve the audited accounts for 23-24 at the appropriate meeting, 1st of July? No, not 1st of July, 11th.
Yes.
Okay, content. So that brings that package together, and we can take it forward to the board. Right, we move to agenda item 2.5. Yeah. And can I invite Paul to present the final internal audit opinion and annual report for 23-24?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I'll take the report as read. I presented the draft report to the May Audit Committee, and this final version today just confirms that all of our work has been completed, and that is summarised on in table 1 on page 5 of the report. And there's a little bit more detail through pages 8 through to 12, talks through each of the individual reviews that we've undertaken throughout the year. Overall, the opinion was of reasonable assurance. That is set out on page 3 of the report. And within the box there, it says that the board can take reasonable assurance that arrangements to secure governance, risk management and internal control within the areas that we reviewed are suitably designed and applied effectively. So that's the key statement that links into the opinion. I probably won't say much more than that. I think it's an fairly self-explanatory annual report, but I probably would say I just want to thank David for working with us throughout the year and meeting regularly, and Sarah also to help our work move smoothly throughout the year, and then more broadly the wider teams within HEIW for engaging with us and working with us to bring the work programme to a close for the year.
Thank you, Paul. And I think the committee should record its thanks to Internal Audit for its role in providing us with ongoing assurance about the conduct of the organisation. It is very much appreciated. And for telling us when we're not getting it right. So that also is appreciated. Any comments or questions for internal audit? No? In which case, are we content to note and receive the annual report? Yes, thank you, colleagues. We move on to agenda item 2.6, the Complaints and Concerns Annual Report 23-24. David, please.
Diolch Cadeirydd. Papur i'w nodi ydy hon os gwelwch yn dda. Da ni'n cyflwyno'r profiad blynyddol yma yn unol â'n polisi trin cwynion. Bydd aelodau yn nodi mae dyma'r tro cyntaf i ni gynnwys pryderon yn yr adroddiad ynghyd â cwynion. Mae ganolbwyntio cwynion i ddechrau fo'i. O ran cwynion, bydd Pwyllgor yn nodi bod ni wedi derbyn 7 cwyn llynedd, a llwyddwyd i ymateb i 4 o'r rhain o fewn yr amser penodedig o 30 diwrnod gwaith. Byddwch hefyd yn nodi bod ni wedi llwyddo i ymateb i bob cwyn o fewn 37 diwrnod gwaith. O ran y pryderon, derbynwyd 23 o pryderon yn ystod cyfnod yr adroddiad. Mae'n bwysig pwysleisio y bod y broses o gwmpas trin cwynion yn rhywbeth da ni'n parhau i ddatblygu. Dyma blwyddyn gyntaf defnyddio adrodd yn ôl fewn y adroddiad, ac mae'r adroddiad hefyd yn amlellu ein blaenoriaethu o ran sicrhau cynnydd o ran y broses adrodd ar cwynion. Felly byddai'n gofyn sgwelwch yma i'r pwyllgor i nodi'r adroddiad.
Diolch, Dafydd. Yes, so are there any comments or questions on this report? Jill?
Thank you, Chair. I just had one, and welcome, obviously, this report, David. I noticed that there still quite a few medical complaints, particularly relating to shared services, which I'm assuming, but correct me if I'm wrong, that that's the single lead employer issue. And I guess my question is, is this historical now in terms of the single lead employer being sorted out? So have the teething issues now all been resolved?
I think we need to take into account that obviously there's a high volume of work taken up by shared services, and that something actually we need to have some concerns that raised with just directly. I think that overall, the course of the year, the number of complaints we've had with regards to the single employer setting up on a downward trend. I'm sure that we still have, given the volume we deal with, that we still have concerns, but certainly compared to where we have been over the course of the last few years, we're in a much better position than we have to them. Certainly,
just to come in on that as well. So obviously it has been an area where, since we've implemented single lead employment arrangements, the concerns that probably previously existed have become a lot more transparent, and we have been working through them as we've extended the single lead employer scheme to more and more groups of trainees. But there has been close working between our medical director and the medical director in shared services to really make sure that we are bottoming out the issues and have a clear plan to really improve the response rate. I think we will always have concerns in that area, because with so many people changing rotations and managing so many trainees across Wales now, there are always going to be concerns. And I think what we need to be worried about is when we don't see any concerns probably coming through that programme. But just to assure you, it's a constant theme within our executive team discussions to make sure that there is enough response to the concerns that are coming through. I think just to build on David's point, really, that this is still something which we do need to work on, and to some extent the information you've got here today shows part of the picture. We haven't joined up all the information flows that need to show us the whole picture. So particularly thinking about the concerns that are perhaps within the remit of the HEIs, but that we need to have sight of as well. So this is a very active conversation at the moment across the executive team. You'll know we've also put in post recently an assistant director for quality, because we don't have that corporate quality presence up until this point. So again, I think there'll be a lot of work that we can progress with this now over the rest of this year in line with our quality plan.
Yeah, just two additional points from me. I'm not sure that all the complaints relate to SLE. I'll get back to you and I'll check that. And obviously, shared services and take all the spectrum work on that on our behalf.
Yeah.
And I'll get back to you to confirm the breakdown there. And just to build on Alex's point in terms of the speaking area development, clearly we are embedding the speaking safety framework, and we'll bring a report to the board in July. And be able to kind of report on the work that we're undertaking to try and create that culture where people do feel safe to raise complaints and concerns. So obviously we're embedding that, and the expectation is that that's embedded effectively and positively. We would expect to see more complaints and concerns coming forward, and obviously those are opportunities to be well suited.
So one of our markers of success going forward will be that we
have more complaints.
We will have more complaints.
Yes.
Of concerns raised because people feel free.
Yes.
To raise them appropriately. Yeah.
My reflection is it's great to see the numbers going up, but I think in a weird way, but I think it's about the learning and the so what. So this report tells us activity. I think in the future, perhaps the education committee or even the board might want to receive a report that says, over the last year, these are some of the key lessons we've learned from the process, and this is what we have done. And that then brings it into the reality of us reflecting and acting. Because the most important thing about complaints is not just hearing them, but actually doing something about it. And I think that's a key to our compassionate leadership process. So I think there is another bit on this to add in the future, and it's great that we've got the opportunity to do that.
Yes. I think it seems to be an evolving report. And hopefully that is
we do capture the key lessons, and we will incorporate that going forward. That's really helpful.
And do we only see this on an annual basis? Is there a regular quarterly report to?
We will pick this up in the Speak Up Safety report in July, but we will be reporting in this area on a quarterly basis going forward, and certainly some is picked up by the exec and the interpretations as well.
That's good. Give us ongoing assurance. So, Judith.
Yeah. This may have been covered in what Alex was talking about, but where there are concerns regarding bullying and discrimination, how does HRW know how those are being taken forward? Are they, in terms of whether there are any investigations going on, whether there's any action taken against people if those allegations prove true? Is that part of what Alex was talking about bringing everything together to sort of have a full picture?
Yeah, because so with our own staff, there's a clear process. With trainees, there's a tripartite arrangement with the health board, shared services as the employer, and ourselves as the education, clearly interested in the overall well-being of the trainee. And then obviously the students is slightly different again. So what we're trying to do at the moment is be really clear on what would happen through those three processes and where our responsibility lies to act, but also what the learning is that we need to be aware of as well. So it's a little bit more complicated than just looking at our staff and our patients.
I guess because of the numbers that it was medical mainly, so it's trainees. Okay, it's helpful. Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? No, in that case, are we content to note the contents of the report for information? Next, we move to agenda item 2.7, the Senior Information Risk Officer Annual Report for 23-24. And it's David, please.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Fel y sain o mae'n bleser cael cyflwyno'r adroddiad yma i'r pwyllgor. Papur yn nodi sicrwydd ydy hon. Mae'r adroddiad yn amlinellu y gwaith da ni wedi gwneud dros y flwyddyn diwethaf o ran cydymffurfio a gofynion cyfreithiol a rheolaethol o gwmpas llywodraethiant gwybodaeth. Mae yn cynnwys cydymffurfiaeth gyda y deddf diogelu data, y deddf rheolaeth gwybodaeth ynghyd â'r gwaith da ni'n gwneud o ran seibr diogelwch. Mae'r adroddiad hefyd yn amlinellu ein blaenoriaethau ar gyfer y flwyddyn sydd i ddod. Felly papur i'w nodi sicrwydd wedi hon. Diolch Cadeirydd.
Quite a lot of information in this report. Are there any questions or comments on it? We do, as an audit committee, receive regular reports both on information governance and on cybersecurity. So this reflects much of what we've already discussed through the year. No specific questions. So again, we are asked to note the report for assurance. Are we content? Yeah, thank you. And finally, we get to 2.8, the review of standing orders, and that's you again, David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, da ni fel corff yn unol â ymarfer da yn adolygu ein rheolau sefydlog yn flynyddol. Bydd y pwyllgor yn ymwybodol i fod o wedi ystyried ei gylch gorchwil yn ei cyfarfod diwetha ar y 24 o Fehefin. Bydd cylch gorchwil y pwyllgor addysg ynghyd â'r pwyllgor rats yn cael ei ystyried yn ei cyfarfod ar yr 11 o'r Gorffennaf. Felly mae'n bwysig pwysleisio os bydd yna unrhyw newidiadau yn codi o'r cyfarfodydd hynny, byddwn ni'n rhannu'r awgrymiadau hynny gyda'r aelodau'r pwyllgor trwy e-bost. O ran prif gorff rheolau sefydlog, mae nifer o newidiadau wedi cael ei wneud o ran cyfarfoddebau ein cyfarwyddwyr, a mae hynny'n adlewyrchu'r newidiadau wneithbwyd i roles cyfarwyddwyr dros y 2 neu 3 mis diwetha. Felly, da ni'n gofyn, os gwelwch yn dda, pwyllgor i adolygu'r newidiadau ac argymell bod y rheolau sefydlog diwygiedig yn cael ei ystyried a'i cymeradwyo gan y bwrdd yn ei gyfarfod ar y 1 o Awst, a bod hynny yn ymodol ar sylwadau o'r pwyllgor archwilio a'r pwyllgor addysg os nesaf. Diolch yn fawr.
Could I just clarify, in the paper, section 3, it says that ECQC is to be reviewed on the 11th of July. But it says that the Remuneration and Terms of Service Committee would be reviewed on the 12th of September. Am I right in assuming that because we now have a meeting of
yes, sorry,
that's next week,
yeah,
that we are going to review that?
Yes,
then?
we have a meeting of us that we hadn't originally anticipated when we wrote the report, but we're able to bring forward the consideration of terms of reference of rats to the meeting next week. Consequently, we're going to see how standards through August. So,
that's good news. Actually, it's very tidy that they get them all reviewed in a timely way and do it as a package. Are there any questions or comments on the changes to standing orders? The amendments are clearly set out in the paper. No questions or comments. Are we content to recommend the revised version of AGIW standing orders to the board for approval at its meeting on the 1st of August?
yes.
Subject to any changes arising from the review of ECQC and RAD's terms of reference. Are we content? Thank you so much. There are no matters for information. I've not been notified of any other business.
No receipt, Chair.
Thank you. The date of the next meeting of the Audit Committee is on Thursday, the 10th of October 2024. And at that point,
Chair, can I just say something at this point? It's very important that this committee feels free to do the work it needs to do to the level it needs to do. And I don't come to Audit Committee very often. Try to only come annually. But what I would say is that I'm very pleased with the way that the committee has developed over the years. I'm immensely relieved how the committee has migrated to a new chair. The membership is reinvigorated and changed. I think it's an excellent thing for an organisation to have a punky audit committee. And I would not want to stop that. I'd encourage it. I think joining the dots, to me, just sitting here to see how all the dots will come together from the granular to up here, it's a really useful opportunity. So as chair, I'd like to say a big thank you to the members for their commitment and particular enjoyment of this type of committee work. I'd also like to thank internal and external audit for the work you do. I would like to reciprocate, to echo that comment about, it's not about having a comfortable relationship. It's about having a professional relationship and a mutual understanding. So thank you for the approaches and for the personable way that the business is being done. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gadeirydd.
Oh, and of course, you know, the old button presses and, you know, how the hell you do this, right? It's beyond my understanding, but I really want you to say thank you to your teams, because it's an incredibly complex bit of machinery that's going on, and it's building, and it's going to get more complex.
We have a lot to look forward to then, Chair.
Yes, I'm always buoyant at this point.
Okay, so on that very positive note, thank you everyone for attending this morning, for your contributions before and during the meeting, all very much appreciated. Diolch yn fawr iawn pawb, a pob hwyl.
Can I meet with the independent?